Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of FTU Life After the Military. I'm your host, Tony Rodriguez, and today I am joined by Shane Johnson. He's the owner of Big Guns Coffee. Is that correct?
Big guns,
Oh, Big Guns.
big
Okay.
guns. Yeah,
So my mind was going back to the old Married with Children days. Uh,
yeah, yeah. No,
so thank you for clarifying that.
yes, sir.
Um, um, yeah. So can you just tell us, like, what inspired you to go into the coffee business?
Well, so technically I didn't start it. So my daughter was the one that came up with it. So she started it when she was 6. So kind of the running jokes. I'm really just her assistant. I had no interest in being in coffee. It wasn't like I was a big giant coffee drinker. I had a cup like anybody else, I guess, or maybe stop by Starbucks every once in a while during the seasonal side and grab a drink. It wasn't anything that I was super passionate about when I started it. I was just I had a culmination of experiences after my life of the military. I became, a motivational speaker, wrote a couple best-selling books, and went through some challenges and some successes, and that kind of culminated all the way down to this book that I'd written called Done by 2:30, and it was really just a kind of a tribute to, well, maybe more of a call to action for fathers to get out there and support their daughters or support their children, their parents in general, when they have dreams and visions. And my daughter, a lot of kids want to do dance, who want to do gymnastics. She's been on the stage with me ever since she was an infant, and she wanted to start a business. So thought it was a great, selfish and selfless opportunity for us to be able to spend a lot of time together before she grew up, and then hopefully give her some lessons that allows her to be able to be a productive, citizen in the real world, and be able to have a foundation to create something great, whether it be generational wealth or be able to pick a career, that she feels that is viable for her and makes her happy. But ultimately, just the things that we don't learn is interpersonal skills, sales, structure of corporation and business, marketing, all of the things that we actually do in any job. It just seems to get more attention when you run a business. But that's really kind of how it came to fruition, the coffee side of it.
Okay, now I'm a little partially deaf in my left ear from being in the military. But she said she started this when she was 6.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. She's now 10. Started it when she was 6, and she's become quite famous at this point. So she's been all over the place.
Yeah, I can imagine at 6 o'clock, 6 years old, I was just wanting to play with my cars, my toy
Yeah.
cars. I wasn't trying to start a business.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's, you know, uh, again, I think it just, I would say there's a little bit of a conditioning there, being around me and being a part of that experience, and seeing maybe the feedback of people when, inspires her. I mean, if you ask her, she really just, she wanted to do something that inspired other little young entrepreneurs to build a business and hang out with her dad. And she tells the story a lot better than I do. So.
So why coffee of all things?
Yeah, so she says the reason it's coffee is she knows that it's the best part of waking up every morning for most people that aren't, tea drinkers. And she says, because I had just, I had ran across America a couple of times and broke a few world records, raise funds for nonprofit organizations and other things. And she had been a part of that. And she says, you know what, maybe not everybody can be strong like you, Dad, but at least maybe they can feel like it in the morning is the best part of their day. And that's why she picked coffee.
No, that's great. Being in the military 22 years, I jumped out of airplanes for 21 years. She's right. Like, my body is just beat up every day. It takes about, I don't know, 45 minutes to get out of bed. And I don't drink, so I'm not hungover. It's just my joints just don't want to move because they hurt so much.
Sure.
So yeah, she's definitely right. A good cup of coffee does go a long way in the morning.
Yes, sir, for sure.
So you mentioned that you had written a book. You've written a couple of books. Um,
I have written 5 books. Yes, sir.
oh, okay. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because what inspired you to write not just one book but 5 books?
Yeah. Well, each one of them kind of had their own little piece to it, but I think, what really kind of started it was uh, my runs across America. The first year I ran across America, well, each year was kind of dedicated to a cause, but mainly it was either around homeless teens, homeless veterans, suicide, mental health struggles, things of that nature. During that time, that was our kind of our big focus of what we were trying to do to give back. And just had a lot of crazy stories growing up, and a lot of different things that happened. And somebody said, you ought to write a story about that. And I was like, yeah, I don't. We all got a story, but um, I just started to put it together as a speaker, and rode 3,000, hike across America, 3,000 miles for your why. And it was the capture was really just, how far are you willing to go for your purpose? I was willing to go 3,000 miles for mine. And even if you just do a little bit, it makes a difference. And it had just the kind of a culmination of these crazy stories growing up, the way I grew up, and some challenges that I faced, and then just trying to turn those chapters into something that you could see, and say, okay, I could do this, or I could make a difference. And then wrote a book on leadership. Pretty boilerplate, nothing too crazy. I mean, leadership is really indicative to your style and what implement. One of the things I thought was interesting about when I started really getting into the leadership sector was just there's this one size fits all sort of thing. And when you run a company, not everybody's the same personality. So, you're not in the military where you can force people to react to the way that you want them to. And even sometimes that's a challenge. So in a traditional civilian setting, you can't force somebody to do something without some type of legal repercussions. So you have to try to adapt your leadership style in order to to custom tailor that to each individual's needs. So that was really kind of the book of that. And then some other stuff with some mental health things, and then the Done by 2:30 book, which was kind of a work-life balance genre, focusing on how to effectively accomplish all of your goals to be done by 2:30, which is when your kids get out of school, and start focusing on being a better CEO of your home life than your business.
Yeah, that's important, right? For me, when I left the military, when I retired, I had a job working on base, but I wanted to see what life was like outside of the military. So I took a job as a project manager in solar construction, right? Commercial solar, which was great. Got to meet a lot of good people. Leadership was different because they could just quit, right? In the military, you can't quit. You can't just say, I'm done, I'm going to leave. Um, but I was away from my family all the time. And so, yeah, I had to leave that job because, like you said, you want to be there for your family, right? We're in the military, we're gone all the time, whether that's deployments or training. You miss your family. And for me, my why now is my family, just being here with them. No, they're having a hard time with me being around so much because they weren't used to it. So that's why I have my little office where I can come to and leave them alone for a little while.
Yeah, yeah, that does make it a challenge. It's, like anything else, there's always challenges, ups and downs. It's just a matter of how you adapt to it. But, military doesn't, I wasn't in as long as you, so, it didn't really define me. It was a chapter, it was a portion of, I mean, look, I'm a Marine through and through. There's no doubt about that. I mean, all Marines are Marines, no doubt. But it doesn't define me. I mean, I'm not covered with stickers on my truck and run around screaming it and so on and so forth. I mean, it was just a chapter of my life that laid a really core foundation for the future of many other accomplishments. Wasn't the only one I'm hanging on to. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just, I don't let it consume my life as if it was the only, as you mentioned, Married with Children. It's not my one touchdown of Al Bundy in high school. It was a chapter of my life.
Yeah, no, and that's great. Part of this reason why I started this podcast was to remind people like we did our time in the military, whether it was one day or whether it was 30 years, right? But I don't look the same way I did when I was in high school, right? Or in college 30 years ago. That's okay. I've had my journey, I've lived my life, and it's all right to look back on that every once in a while and remember, but I want to be here now, right? In the present and, achieve my goals, whatever they are. Um, but I did want to ask you. So you've written these books. You've started a coffee company. Um, how did you go about doing that? Did you guys just wake up one day and say, "Hey, we're just going to go buy some coffee beans," or "I'm just going to start writing a book"?
And there's a little more journey to that. So I got out of the Marine Corps in 2002. So right after 9/11, I was severely injured. Um, and I got out and I fell into to finance. A lot of guys, they go fire department, Leos, private security. I was with the First Reconnaissance Battalion in Camp Pendleton. I served about a year and a half with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, and 29 Palms as infantry, and then I went over to Battalion Recon the latter half of my career. And so there was a lot of guys I served with that were full operators that were getting, I was right during the air marshal times, when they were hiring pretty aggressive of that, after 9/11. And, I think at the time Blackwater, which is no longer Blackwater, but Triple Canopy and all those different companies were bringing in, private contractors and doing all kinds of stuff. And that was the gig. I just got away from Big Brother. I just really didn't want anything to do with it anymore. The political side of the military and kind of what into it. And again, I've always been that kind of person. When I accomplish something, there's really no need for me to kind of stay around anymore because it's a mute point. So, once I closed that chapter, I went on to something else, and I just honestly stumbled into finance and sales. And it was just something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed understanding money, understand people, and sales, and the dynamic of it. So I built probably I'd say almost a 20-year career just in doing that. Started my first company when I was 26. So, and, built that. And 2008 happened and I lost it, and, ended up homeless for a little bit, just a combination of other challenges and some things I didn't, address mentally after my injuries. And then I built another company that did about $300 million worth of sales out of a Dunkin' Donuts free Wi-Fi while I was kind of living in the woods sort of thing. So, the books, when I became a full-blown motivational speaker, it was just really kind of part of it. People would always ask more about your story, or they wanted to dig into it. They want to engage. They want to share your story. They want to use it as reference to hopefully inspire themselves through their challenges they're going through. So it was kind of like a long page pamphlet, for people to kind of look back on and connect with, and maybe just share some of my pain. I think when you go into business, one thing I thought was always interesting when you read a book, they really just kind of scatter over the challenges, and then talk about the successes. And I didn't like that. I want to know. It's just like, when you go into building a terrain model and you're preparing to go and engage. I mean, I want to know the potential threats and issues. I want to know the challenges. I want to know it all. I'm not scared of it. I don't want you to hide it from me so that I build up this fear base. I want to know what's in front of me. So it was really just kind of understanding that and developing that speaking platform and that book around those challenges. But like, look, I went through this, and you know, if I did it, you can do it, sort of thing. So that's kind of how it started. So it was many years of experience, and then when my daughter decided to do with the coffee side, it was really just an aha moment for me. Like you mentioned, I want to stop working away and deploying, and I want to be here with my family. It was really, I knew that when you have children, you have a window, and that window, by the time they really kind of understand who you are, let's say 4 to 5 years old, up until maybe 13 years old, maybe even 12 years old, that's your window. And the rest of the world has them for the rest of their life. And that's a short window for a parent. I think we really take that for granted. I mean, I understand that we're in and out through series, but that window, they're all ours. So I wanted to capture that time because I served with a lot of guys that didn't come back and will never get that time with their kids. So I wanted to be grateful of my second chance at life and get behind it. So she said, coffee. Okay, great. And like anything else, we just dug into it and tried to figure out what it was and learned all about it. And it became kind of a learning process for us and time to spend.
So one, like, yeah, that's pretty courageous. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that, but so I've talked to quite a few people, and there's this fear of taking that leap and like pursuing their idea or their dream because I don't want to lose what I have, which isn't much, or maybe it is, I don't know. But they're afraid to take that leap. And you glanced over it just saying like, hey, I was working using free Wi-Fi in a Dunkin' Donuts. It's like, that's a pretty big deal. Like, uh, I don't know if many people would do that. It's just like, yeah, I'm going to figure it out and just go sit in a Dunkin' Donuts and start this company again and start all over.
I had this conversation on a podcast the other day, and I think as time's evolved, I've gotten a little better with the response. And I think the best way to kind of sum that up is, and again, like I said, it doesn't define me, but it is a
Yeah.
toolbox and chapters that I can pull from. And I say the Marine Corps, I think, is definitely prepared. Though we use transition as a buzzword to kind of come up with all the stuff we come up with. I think the Marine Corps actually prepares you better for the real world than other branches of the military. Just because we're so underfunded and we're taught to be challenged with so little. Whereas the other branches, you're in kind of a lap of luxury. And I don't mean that in like the joking, funny way. I mean that in the sense of that, when you think about an average soldier or sailor, Air Force, they're like an NFL athlete. They have access to 100% healthcare at any moment or second they need it. They have food provided them with any moment or second that they need it. They've got access to some of the best trainers, workout facilities, um, you know, you know, brains, knowledge, resources, officers. I mean, just untapped resources at just the snap of your fingers, right? Set aside the amount of leadership, training, conditioning. I mean, the amount of money that is spent on a United States member of the military is got to be absurd, and it's got to be even more than it would be to be a professional athlete. So I don't think the transition is hard because it's a challenge of trying to understand the real world. I think the challenge is because you've just been coddled and you've had this amazing amount of resources. And when you get in the real world, that's not how it works. You got to pay for those resources. They're not something that the general taxpayers pay for on your behalf. And I think the Marine Corps gives you a dabble of that, even though we do have access to all those things as well. It gives you just a little taste of what it's like to be completely underfunded and go out to something and say, we have nothing. How do we figure out how to make it something? And I think that's the real world. The real world says, oh, okay, great. You need healthcare? Sweet. You got to pay for it. Oh, you want to have 3 meals a day custom tailored to your eating habits? Great. You got to pay for those. You want to have a personal trainer. You want to have some of the highest level gym facilities ever with access to training every day to get you up in the morning to make you run 10 miles and keep your weight under control. Great. You're going to pay for that. And in the real world, that is not $30,000 a year. That's like $300,000 a year. I think it's really just kind of an understanding of, taking those experiences and those things and look at it from the Marine Corps and saying, all right, well, here we are back at scratch. Here's where we want to go, restructure, adapt, improvise, and overcome, put the plan together, and then go back out at it again.
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation of it. Coming from the Army side, like, spent all my time here at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and there are quite a few organizations that help people transition, get ready, do their resumes, practice interviews. But there's this misconception that there's like a line of companies waiting right outside the base, just waiting for people to retire. And as soon as you walk off the base, here's your job for, making 500,000 a year or 1 million a year. Like, we've been waiting all this time just for you to come off. And, that's not reality. And so, no, it's refreshing to hear. Like, yeah, it takes a lot of work. It's some people are lucky and their transitions are pretty quick, and other people have to work at it. That's why I said it's like, yeah, sitting in a Dunkin' Donuts using free Wi-Fi, that's pretty creative. I don't know how many people would do that. I would assume, and this is just my assumption, is that more people would probably just say, oh, well, it didn't work, forget it. I better go find some job at Walmart or an auto parts store and just live my mundane life.
I don't know. That does.
Yeah,
I don't. Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just taking a guess. I don't know. That's a big assumption about the veteran community. I don't know.
Well, I think that look, not all veterans are created equal, and not all active service members are created equal. I mean, we've got our own flaws within the organization as well as out. Just because the general public says thank you for your service doesn't necessarily mean we were at the top notch. All of us are in that general. I mean, we all know that. It's just not something that's spoken about on an open forum as much. I mean, the reality of it is within the organization, there's probably 95% slackers in that too. So, I think the difference is that yes, to take the leap of faith, whether you're sold, not sold, whether it's college for country, a spirit of the core, whatever it is, to go above and have that ounce of courage compared to others does say something about the overall average of those that serve the military. I 100% agree. There's a difference between someone that says, I'm going to go here, and then someone says, I'm going to go serve my country. And they don't always say, I'm going to go serve my country. I need college, I need benefits, I need opportunities. I'm in a position where I can't get out of that. But there is that moment that that person does have that kind of little extra. And then, but life doesn't work like that. You don't just make one and then you're traditionally holding on to that forever. Life is a series of opportunities that allow you to kind of walk up steps more and more and more to hopefully get to whatever your objective or your end purpose is. I think a lot of us get caught on the fact that we stepped on step one and we're like, yes. And we don't realize that in order to have the things that we want, there's 400 more steps above that. You just don't get it because you stepped on step one. So, I think, we're all created equal, but there are some that, we just think a little differently. That's all. And it comes
Yeah.
at different times
Yeah.
too. It's not always somebody does it when they're young. They could wait till they're in their 50s and then they have that aha moment. It's really just up to your purpose and what it is that you want to accomplish.
Yeah. So a little bit about me. I know before we started, we only spent a couple of minutes, but so I'm working on my PhD currently. And the focus of my dissertation is I'm looking at the training, the coaching, and the mentoring that administrators at the Department of Veterans Affairs receive. Because how can we better? Is there a correlation between the training that they receive and the amount of veterans that abandon the treatments from the VA? Like how many people stop going to the VA because they had a bad experience with administrators? And so I want to see if there's some sort of correlation between the training that they receive, if they receive any, are they being coached or are they being mentored? Can we help these people so we can help the veteran community as a whole get the services and get the assistance that they need? So that's my dissertation topic, and that's also part of the reason why I started this podcast, because I don't want to see any veteran living on the street or having a hard time if there's no need for that. So that's why I like having people like you on, so we can talk about success stories. Because me personally, looking at your website, reading about what you've accomplished, I personally think you're a success story. Yeah, you faced some challenges, but you've come out on the other side looking pretty good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think, look, we all get a deck of cards. How we play them is up to us. There is a sense of responsibility that does come with some of the things that we have. We can't point the finger forever. And at some point, we've got to point the finger back and say, okay, well, how do we fix it? How do we adapt? I mean, life, there is no one person that says life is, I mean, nobody wants to watch a movie that doesn't have an antagonist to the story, right? I mean, you've got to have some type of antagonist. So you have to have a challenge. That's what makes muscle grow. That's what makes us better soldiers, sailors, and Marines. It's just an age old story, right? That's never going to go out of style. So, I think, I don't know. I'm very fortunate. We live here close to Asheville, which is the number one VA. And their customer service is amazing. They're always very welcoming and open. And if I need anything, they're on top of it. I have been to other VAs, but I don't want to sit here and say I had a bad experience because I didn't. And now, have I been failed out of many things and not went to stuff? Absolutely, of course. But I don't think that's the VA's fault. My VA's fault. I think it was just me, just trying to work through my own stuff and trying to understand how to navigate through that. Anything you can do to make any little piece a little bit easier for someone, based off of your experiences. But I think success is also relative. It's what you consider success. If you'd asked me that when I was in my 20s, it'd have been money. Not that I don't like money. I like money, but now it's about how to be a phenomenal father to my daughter and make an impact that allows her life to go on and be better.
Yeah. So to get back to your daughter and your coffee business, I know I'm a little bit all over the place on this discussion,
Okay.
so I apologize.
Good.
Like how she's 6 and she comes to you and says she wants to start this coffee business. Like, does she already have an idea of like where she's going to get these coffee beans and how she's going to like? Does she have a business plan at 6 years old?
So no, she didn't have a business plan. What we started with, and again, that's based off of leadership, right? So you take a moment, you take a step back, Most parents acknowledge that, think it's cute, and says, "Okay, great," but we don't have the time for it, and they move on. And I think that's if if there's a message to this or a clip in the podcast for the audience is really like I think now look I'm gonna disclaimer this so that way everybody can kind of pay attention. So when I use the term God, it's not identified with a specific religion. It's just a higher power above us that we can't explain because our little human brains are too small to figure it out. So we go through life looking for spirituality and guidance. Okay, some of us have a name for it, and we use that. And and again, they'll say it's God, it's Jesus. We pray. I need spiritual guidance because it's way higher than any mentor, coach, family member. And it's an unbiased conversation. Right? It's a conversation you can have, knowing all your flaws, your true you, and that reflection is one that isn't negative, and it's love, caring, and positivity. And children up into a certain age, they don't understand religion. They don't understand that concept yet. So they're mimicking that same model, but it's you that sits in the place of God. And you're looking down, they're looking up, right? When they're hungry, you feed them. When they're lonely, you're there. When they're sad, you're there. When they need guidance, you're there. And I think we as parents forget that. We think that what we're supposed to do is put the fear, the cancer of fear into our children, both as a dictator, but both as also to don't do this because you'll probably fail, and I failed, so you'll fail too, sort of thing. And one of the biggest things that'll get me lit is somebody will say, well, your daughter's not scared. I'm like, well, we don't let that cancer in our home. We don't let fear get as a cancer in our home. I do not let that in my daughter. I'm pretty girl dad all through and through, but she knows I will get very marine very fast when it comes to talking about fear because that'll break dreams really, really fast. And you can be scared. There's nothing wrong with being scared, but we're still doing it anyways. And when she is children, we look at we're very pretentious in our approach that we have to guide them, teach them everything. Well, I know better. I know better. I know better. Right. And it's like listening to a failed coach that's never succeeded at anything. And I don't mean that to be mean, but that's what it's like as a parent. Like, more than likely you're not where you want to be. So you're trying to give guidance to this little human that is, getting advice from a bad coach because they've never succeeded at the level that they want them to. But you're trying, so sometimes your projection leaks through and you kind of kill them of their dreams and think we know it all. And I think God makes children the way they are from that 5 to like 12 range when they just think you're the coolest thing in the world, more for you than for you for them. I think what it does is it's the first time in your life when someone truly, truly loves you more than your partner, more than your family, more than anything. When that little human loves you so much that it's just pouring this sense of confidence and positive responsibility and leadership into you, and you must pay attention to it. And I understand that's probably a little out there, but to me, when my daughter said that, it was a moment that I had to pay attention to, that it was God's version of saying, maybe your dreams are dead. And maybe you got the best little partner right here that you can do it with, and you'll do it for a purpose and a cause and be driven to serve this person. And that's really kind of what happened. So when she did it, I said, all right, the only way you can do it is if you come up with a name and the logo. I'm not doing that. And I said, and the promise is that you'll do everything in the business. You'll be at attorney meetings, you'll be at CPA meetings, you'll go through financials together, you'll fill out grant contracts, we'll go through, you'll speak, you'll pitch, you'll close. Set aside all the stuff she can only do at 10, but all of this, you'll be a part of it or you'll be doing it. And I said, and that's the deal. You want to do that? Just like if you were to do dance and you had to dance all day, and it's not me up there dancing, it's you up there dancing. So you don't want me dancing. So that was kind of the structure behind it. So 20 minutes later, she came back with a name and the logo, and then we just doubled down on it and went to it and learned. We didn't know anything about it. And that's what was fun. We were able to learn together, and she gave ideas and I listened to those ideas and I implemented those ideas. So when she comes up with a strategy to do something, I'll implement it. And man, that's powerful to a kid because you give them a sense of respect and responsibility, and they'll go really far. It's like I don't know how you grew up, but my family owned a ranch, and when you own a ranch, a lot of times you'll drive farm vehicles, a lot younger than when you get your license. And so my grandpa, when I was younger, he'd say, hey boy, go up there and get on that tractor and drive it around. And it just made you feel like $1 million, learning how to drive at such a young age and being a part of something. it's kind of the best way I can equate it to is believing in them and trusting in them that they can do great things.
No, that's really good. And your explanation of your daughter, there that it's not out there at all. That's actually really good. I grew up in a very traditional Latino family. The guy goes to work, woman stays home, cleans. You know, you don't if you're a male, you don't tell other males that you love them. Very, very traditional. And it's just recently that my best friend, my brother, like he would always tell me that he loved me, but I wouldn't say it back because just don't do that, right? And it finally, after I don't know, 20 years of knowing him, I started to say that because getting older, and I don't know how much time we have left together. So why am I wasting the time on things that just don't matter? For me, I want to tell the people that I love. I want them to know that I love them. That they mean the universe to me. They're my why. They're the reason why I get up and do anything. So no, your explanation was not out there at all. I totally understand what you're saying. My hero was, is, and always will be my daughter.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing, no love I've ever felt in my life compared to the love of what it is to have my daughter. Like I said, part of my life. I mean, I don't know, it's pretty inspirational. I'm scary the day that she doesn't need me anymore. I'm not looking forward to that one.
Yeah, my daughter is 23. She's going to graduate school. So fortunately, I am still needed a little bit with her assignments. So I'll get random texts or phone calls. Hey, can you help me out with this? Yes, I would love to help you out with this. Um, so for me, I'm a little concerned. She has about a year left. When she graduates, will I get the phone calls? Hopefully so. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. We could finding excuses and reasons.
Yeah.
Going over and breaking something in her house. That way she calls you to come over and fix it.
Now I go over to her house, like to clean up for her. I'm almost like her personal maid. And my wife gets upset at that. It's like, why are you doing that? She's an adult. It's like, just let me spend some time with my daughter.
Yeah,
I don't care what it is. Just let me spend a few minutes with her.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, so I was reading on your website, like about like, I guess, where do you manufacture these beans? Like, do you grow your own beans?
Yeah, that's kind of like our big claim to fame, our hook that so we are the first and only indoor hydroponic coffee farmers in the world. So we have a patent pending process on basically the farm system, um, the harvest protocols, and the oh Shane, come on, the coffee farm to retail structure. So we are in development right now of creating the full blown, like just think about it, South American coffee experience inside of a retail space. So coffee's gotten up to the steps to where it first starts where it's like, here's a cup of coffee, here's a cup of coffee, here's a cup of coffee. Then the next kind of model was, ooh, look at the roaster. We're going to roast coffee and then serve you that coffee. So people go in and go, man, there's a roaster. It's fresh. It's coming from there. And then it got halted about right there. There was no real creative thought process of how do we make that full circle. So over the last few years, we basically come up with a model now where we implement the farm. So now you got the farm, you got the roasting, you got the cafe. Creating that entire experience and creating and making a complete paradigm shift in the coffee industry. Making something to the point to where we're working on the innovative approach to farming. We're helping with supply chain issues. It's kind of a larger scale, but as it sits, so we do a mix. We have small fair trade farms, just like any traditional coffee that we work with. We get beans in, we roast it, and then we package it and send it out. And then we also farm and grow our own coffee indoors.
Okay. And your product, what are so I heard of the what is that Black Rifle coffee? For me, that coffee is just I love drinking coffee, but Black Rifle is a little too strong. I don't need that much caffeine in my life. Your product, where does it stand? Like,
So coffee is I feel like with coffee, I should probably be like that magician that used to come on like TV or Netflix a while back ago that would wear the mask and reveal all of the stuff about the
Yeah,
magicians.
yeah,
Because coffee's just been a marketing gimmick for so long. It's just been, a way, but just like anything in the consumer packaged goods world or food, it's just been something that's been marketed to us to make us go out and buy the product and the brand aspect of it. Because it's just, man, I could go in so many different ways with that conversation only because you've been lied to for so long.
yeah.
Look, if you buy from any large mass chain, let's say Black Rifle. Now, we sometimes people will say, "Oh, I mean, and my daughter will always be like, "Look, it's guns, muscles, not guns." So totally different model. But you know, when you get so big and consumer demand is so high, just like in anything else, you can't meet the need of consumers of a perfect product. It just doesn't work that way. That's the problem with mass consumption. When you have mass consumption, large companies have to figure out ways to dilute that natural product in order to meet demand because you can't. I'm gonna get. It's gonna sound a little conspiracy theorist, but we don't make land anymore, so we can't. If we have more people, occupying property, that leaves less property to build for consumption of product, right? So if I go into a rural America and I have all this farmland that produces all these tomatoes, and I'm producing tomatoes to meet the need of all the people in this city, okay? And then all of a sudden that city produces double the amount of people, but those double amount of people need to live somewhere. So they come out to that rural area and they turn that into homes. Well, yes, people have a place to live, but the produce that I was creating becomes smaller. And because we're not at the point of creating innovative ways yet I mean, we are creating them, but maximizing them, we can't get any more space on land because the land acquisition cost is too much. And we can't go certain places without changing the infrastructure of Mother Nature, which is going to cause a whole other bunch of problems. So when you look at something like Black Rifle and you think about the coffee, and the United States is the second most drink product in the United States is coffee. And then you think about the farming part of that, of where these farms are and how that has to be shipped in and the logistics and the cost and the time and the weather factors that play in that. By the time you even get that product, and there's so much product, that farmer, if you're an individual farmer and your entire livelihood is dependent on someone buying that coffee product and that coffee product and that farm gets an aphid or a pest and you can't control that pest, and then some guy shows up and says, I've got this spray that you can spray on these trees and it'll get rid of those pests and you can sell that coffee and get paid. I mean, you're not going to be like, oh, I wonder if my coffee quality grade is going to be where it needs to be, right? Like what you're going to do is you're going to spray it, kill the bugs, you're going to harvest coffee and get it out because you got to get paid and you got to feed your family, because if you don't, you're done for. So I don't necessarily think it's a matter of the difference of quality. That's what makes us so innovative in our approach is we're like, look, we'll never be we'll never be the coffee industry. Never. But what we might be is a good solid resource or supply chain for Americans on site that starts kind of a revolution, if you would say, in getting people to understand indoor farming and how in that hook so that we can start looking at innovative ways to take the traditional thought process and technology and merge them together so that we can try to produce the most the safest kind of food that we can eat without it just growing in the ground. So I kind of we've been on a big kick in the direction of our business that way, but really the thing is I like to kind of dumb it down. We're like the Subway of coffee, right? So you walk in, you see the sandwich, you see how it's made, you see all these different things. That transparency, it's kind of what we're trying to create with coffee. So now is it organic? Oh, well, now you can see. Where is it grown? Oh, well, now you can see. Are there any pests to it? Oh, well, now you can see. So it allows some transparency to the consumer of coffee, which is, kind of a big thing. So that's kind of how it all kind of came together in comparison to other companies. So we're not like other companies in the sense of what we're doing. We're like no one because no one's doing what we're doing because we hold the proprietary IP for it. But um, uh, we want people to be, especially the way coffee is consumed, we want it to be as fresh as possible, farm to cup.
That's great. And the reason for that is because, my family, everybody in my family drinks coffee, have their entire life, right? We all started drinking coffee about 5 years old. But like with most things, you drink what you've had your entire life. Why would I change? If I've had Folgers coffee my entire life, why would I try something else? Right. And that's how my mother and my sisters were. I, when I was in the military, was able to go down to South America, right? Colombia and Peru. So I got to try different coffee. It blew my mind. I didn't know there was anything else. It's like, you mean I don't have to drink Folgers? It's like, no, there's a wide variety of coffee that you can choose from. And so for me, yeah, I wanted to hear your process just so we could get it out. So whoever's listening to this, yeah, you don't have to drink Maxwell House or Folgers. You can try something else. It's okay to
Yeah, I think that.
try it, and maybe decide maybe this isn't for me, or maybe this is the best stuff I've ever had.
Well, I think like anything else, it just look, the general public's all about everyday low prices. I mean that.
Yeah.
Look, there's coffee out there you could drink every day, and you'd be like, wow, this would blow your mind. But can you spend the amount of money it takes to get it, sort of thing. So, like anything else, you just got to pick your poisons and your luxuries and determine, which one and what price point you want to be at. Most of your Folgers, companies like that, they've been branding for a long time. They've had an amazing price for a long time. And quick, easy, throw it in and make it, and you can burn through it, and it's not that big of a deal. It's just that's years and years of branding. But I think not our generation, but I will say the generation, our children's generations are a little bit more aware of what's in their product, which is good. And I think they're starting to pay more attention to it. If you look at the traditional trends that they want to know, like, is this healthy? Is this not healthy? I mean, we grew up and we're like, oh, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, like, heck yeah. And the generation before us was like, oh, cocaine and Coke. All right, awesome. So I think we're getting to a point to where, this generation is really, really paying attention to it and saying, I don't think I want all that stuff in my drink. I want to know what's in there, and I want something a little more healthy, which is a positive trend.
Yeah, definitely. Looking back on like my daughter's 23, but looking back on like some of the stuff that I prepared for dinner when she was younger, it's like, man, I can't believe I was feeding my daughter that stuff, because like no person on the planet should be eating processed foods, that amount of processed foods. So yeah, you're definitely right that the younger generation is taking more of a concern with this, and I'm happy with that because I have a granddaughter. She's 9, and the first thing she does is she looks at the labels to see what's on there. So yeah, definitely, I'm really happy that she's interested in that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So your daughter, your publicist reached out to have you on here. I was wondering if she was going to be on here. Does she do podcasts at all, or
Yeah.
you,
Yeah, she does them. Yes, she does podcasts, she does speaking, she does all the things. So she likes to. She's usually a part of quite a bit of it, but she's still 10, so she likes
yeah,
to hang out with her friends and go and live life, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
like to kind of support that. But
yeah.
she's had a big busy schedule the last couple of weeks. We just got back from Kansas City, where we auditioned for Shark Tank. So she was busy, pitching that, and we traveled to Chicago the week before, where she goes and talks to some more, retail stores, and we've been doing some interviews. And she also works. She gets up about 4:30 in the morning, and works our coffee trailer. We still have our coffee trailers, so she goes out and works out a few days a week. So she stays pretty busy, but today she's chilling.
No, that's good. That's awesome. Getting up at 4:30.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever get up at 4:30 ever again in my life. It's so that's awesome. At what 10 years old, she's getting up to pursue her dreams.
Yeah, she's I don't know. I don't She's easy, man. I wish I could tell you, take all the credit for it, but she's this easy kid. She's kind of one that'll be up and ready to go, and she's not hard to get together, and she just does her thing. I don't know. I'm just blessed for it. I don't have to tell her to clean her room. I don't have to tell her to do her schoolwork. I mean, she's homeschooled now, and she just had her test I guess this past Friday. And, I mean, some of her stuff, she's in high school, post college, pre college. I mean, she's published her own book last year, that she did as part of her homeschool project that we put together. I mean, um, she's just a good kid. So, you know, she makes it easy.
Yeah. So big guns, right? where can somebody purchase this coffee if they were so inclined?
Sure. Yeah, they could go to the website biggunscoffee.com. All of our social media at Big Guns Coffee. And then next month, you'll be able to go to your local. Well, if you're in North Carolina, South Carolina, you can go to any Walmart in North Carolina, South Carolina next month and grab the Charlie's Blend and the Motivator, which is her blend and my blend. At this point, I'm pretty sure you can go to any Sprouts across the country right now and grab our product off the shelves. I think it just launched last week, if not this week. And then next month, you can also go to any Home Goods across the country and grab the product. And if you're military and you got an AAFES account, you can log in and go to Army Air Force Exchange and find us online. And those would be most of the places that you could find us right now.
Okay, no, that's great. Definitely going to go on there and purchase some coffee. And it's great because I live in North Carolina, so now I can just go into Walmart.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. We should. It'll be our K cups. Our K cups will be available in the Walmart. So not our bags, but you'll be able to get our K cups on there if you do a K cup.
Okay, no, that's great. The people at work will love that.
Perfect.
So we're going on about 46 minutes here, Shane. Is there anything else that you want to talk about or mention? I don't know if you have any charities that you support or anything else that you might be involved in that you might want to mention.
No, no. Normally, I have something that we've been pretty heads down on this business lately with all of the different things that we're doing. So this year we may do another world record attempt and raise some funds for different organizations, but I think we're a little too early for determining who it's going to be and what's going to happen right now. I think I'll just leave it with this, on kind of what you mentioned about your audience and business and transition and stuff. I think if I could give any advice to those coming out of the military or want to start a business, you got to really define it sounds so cliche, but you really got to define your why. And I only use that context because Simon Sinek branded the crap out of that and everybody just kind of uses it as a buzzword. But you just got to figure out that direction, that purchase, that mission objective. You really, really have to. Some people, and it's going to change. There's not just one that you keep forever. My recommendation is when you get out, it sounds like it's going to sound, but focus on money. Focus on getting paid. If you're not getting 100% and you're not retired, you don't have a check, or even if you are, you're still telling how long that stuff will last, or the kind of lifestyle that you're going to want. Bet on yourself, as much as possible, and go out there and find out what that purpose is. If you want to make 2, 3, 4, 500, 600,000, $1 million a year, that's okay. It doesn't have to come with this negative connotation that if you want to make money, you're some horrible person. I kind of turn my nose up in the nonprofit sector a lot because I always used to tell nonprofits, your job is to go out of business. It's not to stay in the business because that means you've cured whatever cause that it is that you're trying to raise funds for. And capitalism and making money's got such a negative, kind of black label to it. I think it just sucks because I can help a lot more people with money than I can without money. And any nonprofit's doing nothing but going after the person that's making money to get the money to fund to take it to the other person. So I think go out and build a great business, build a for-profit business, employ people. When you employ people and you give jobs, they can go buy homes and they can send their kids to college and they can get them clothes and food. And, and we have all the foundation and leadership resources, that we're so much further ahead than everyone else when it comes to that. Don't transition to try to figure out what your purpose is. Your purpose is to serve. Your oath is commitment for life, not just while you're under contract. So, find a way to be a pillar of the community and build something great to employ people. Not just veterans. I'm going to only hire veterans. Hire all kinds of people. Give jobs to young people that need leadership and inspiration that maybe don't need to serve in the military. But there's nothing wrong with being under that leadership and utilizing those tools and resources to build a stronger community. And I think that's pretty powerful. So I think, define that purpose and it's okay if it's money and go out and make your money. And once you have that, that'll change too. Pretty soon money loses its taste after a while. You can only have the newest car and the biggest house and the nicest clothes and you need that. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Go out and get it. You'll feel it. And then you'll be like, this wasn't as cool as I thought it was, and then you'll start to look at different purposes and, and find something. And don't forget to work on yourself. I think that's the last part I'll leave it with. And I say work on yourself, learn to serve yourself. Learn to serve yourself. Take the time to go on that fishing trip. Take that time to go on the walk. Take the time to go hunt. Take the time to do the things that you want to do. Don't always have to kind of sell people like, oh, I want to spend all this time with my family. Like, look, family doesn't want to spend all this time with us any more than we want to do them sometimes. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. That, it's not mean we're abandoning them. It just means that they probably care enough about you and they're better at it than themselves of focusing on themselves. My daughter teaches me that all the time. I always think like, I'm at service, I'm at service, I'm at service. And she's like, Dad, I want to do my own thing. And I realize like she's self-caring when she's doing that. She's setting boundaries. And I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do the same thing. I want to take my time and go do this. So, take the time to take self-care, pay attention to yourself, healthy wise, focus on that. Go to your VA appointments like you're supposed to. Don't run away from them. Just get in there, good, bad, or indifferent. Take that time to work on yourself and make sure that if you start a business, that you're an entrepreneur, not a wantrepreneur. Okay, you don't want to just want to, because being an entrepreneur is harder than your military service. I'm gonna tell you that right now, because in your military service, you've got people to lean on. In entrepreneurship, you don't have anybody to lean on. You're all by yourself. So make sure that's what you want to do, and you've got a good core at home in order for you to do that, or at least a good set of friends that are willing to support you on it.
Yeah, that's great advice. One of my friends, Derek, got out of the military, left, and he started a farm, and everybody thought he was insane. It's like, what do you know about farming? It's like, I'm going to learn. And he's excelling at it. He started it maybe about 6 months before COVID hit. And he was raising chickens at first. And then he realized that, well, I have to sell these eggs. So he developed some sort of delivery system to get eggs out. And first it was him. And then I don't know if he partnered with like UPS or somebody, but he was shipping his eggs, overnighting them. It's like, I didn't even know you could do that. Like they don't break, but no, they weren't. So yeah, he's excelling at what he did. We all thought he was insane, but he had the courage to follow his dream. So you're right.
That's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for having me on your show and allowing me the opportunity to tell our story to your listeners. And, thank you for your service. And I appreciate your time today and allow me to be here.
No, thank you very much. And if you're listening out there, please go out and buy some coffee. It's big guns. All right. Not the rifle, but actually the biceps.
Got it.
All right. So as always, remember everybody, you have something that makes you unique, something that makes you different, something that makes you special. Identify what it is, and I know you will be successful. So until next time, zot, 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 and roll tide.